Welcome everybody to another QB Power Hour. I'm very glad to have you all joining us today. Today's topic is job costing in QuickBooks Online and the new projects feature. I'm going to be demoing for you how we do our job costing with this new feature called projects. So I'm very glad to have you joining us and learn more about this. And we've got Pavandeep from Intuit joining us as well. So our agenda for the day is we're going to talk a little bit about QB Power Hour and the hosts and the sponsors. We'll talk about the CPE process as well as ACE credits, which this one is eligible for ACE. And our topics and learning objectives today, we're going to talk about and help you learn how to set up and customize QuickBooks Online for job costing. We're going to talk about how to create a budget versus actual reports for your jobs or your projects, and then understand how this new project feature works. So we're going to be taking you through start to finish, from setting it up and getting ready to use it, entering those transactions, creating budgets, a whole workflow, as well as following up with the reports. So I'm glad to have you joining us for all this. My name is Michelle Long. I am a CPA with my own practice, Long for Success. I've had my practice for a really long time, and now I specialize in QuickBooks consulting and training, and I love being a contract trainer for Intuit, helping accountants and bookkeepers learn more about QuickBooks Online. Also, I'm co-host, in addition to the QB Power Hours, co-host with the Accounting VCon. Sandy Smith and I are doing that. We've got another great VCon coming up in September. Just go to accountingvcon.com and you'll learn more about that. It's a two-day event, and it's I think our 5th or 6th year of doing it. So check that out if you're interested. Hector, I'm sorry. Hector, would you like to introduce yourself?
Okay, I'll be Heather today.
Sorry, you two look so much alike, right?
Hi, my name is Hector Garcia. I'm a CPA. I work and live in Miami, Florida. I have my own classroom down here in which I teach QuickBooks and a little bit of Excel. Member of the Intuit Trainer Writer Network. I usually post my email, hector@garciacpa.com, if you have any questions. I'm pretty available for questions.
Awesome. And Pavandeep, would you like to introduce yourself?
For sure. Thank you, Michelle. Hi, everyone. My name is Pavan, and I'm a product manager with Intuit. I work on the QuickBooks Online projects team, and that's the new feature that Michelle will be talking about in a little bit from now. I'm really happy to be here. I've been with Intuit for about a little more than 2 years. I've been working on a few features and really excited to represent the projects team here and field any questions the audience might have. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So a little bit about the QB Power Hour. This is a webinar series that we do every other Thursday for the most part. We've got some upcoming episodes, July 27th, so 2 weeks from now, and then August 10th. So we're on the regular schedule every 2 weeks. You can just set that up as a recurring series in your calendar. We talk about tips, tricks, and advanced insight on either QuickBooks Desktop, QuickBooks Online, and some of these, or all of these webinars are eligible for CPE if you attend them live. If you're listening to this recording, it is not eligible for CPE. And about once per month, we're doing them eligible for ACE credits. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. We do also have some special guests from time to time with some third-party apps, practice management, value pricing, or other topics like that. So we're glad to have you joining us. Hector, do you want to talk about the CPE?
Sure, absolutely. So if you're a CPA or a certified bookkeeper or another professional designation that requires you to get professional education, we are accredited by NASBA, so these webinars will give you a CPE certificate. I ask you sometimes to wait 3 to 6 weeks before requesting the certificates. Sometimes I do get delayed. June was a particular difficult month in July because of conferences and travel. So we have sent already all the certificates up to May 25th. So all the June and July, I will send them this week. Anyway, you have to attend live in order to get your certificate. You must be logged in for at least 50 minutes, and you do have to answer the CPE questions. So there's no CPE password anymore. That slide contains an old line in there. But you're gonna be asked 4 questions in total. You have to answer at least 3 in the 50 minutes in order to be eligible, and they get emailed to you. And make sure that qbpowerhour@gmail.com is added as your friendly list, so it doesn't go into your junk. I get a lot of people email me requesting certificates, and it just goes to junk. Now, in the same CPE certificate, you will have an ACE logo on the bottom that says, yes, the CPE also has ACE or it doesn't have ACE. And ACE or ACE has to do with advanced pro advisors that need that advanced certified credits as well. So this particular episode will have ACE, but not all of our episodes have ACE.
Okay, very good. And did you want to talk about the rest of this, Hector?
Sure. So Intuit has ongoing training events. Some of them are in person. Some of them are webinar based. Most of them are free. I really haven't run into a paid Intuit event. So you go to qbtrainingevents.com. Strongly recommend that you check that out. And the largest QuickBooks conference of the year will happen in mid-November in San Jose, California. I believe the dates changed a little bit because of it was a date change. So it's actually not November 13th to the 15th anymore. I believe it's the 15th to the 17th. So it's the same week. And check that out, QuickBooksConnect.com. And I would like to thank our sponsors, TSheets, #1 rated app in the App Store. It's the best app for doing timesheets and scheduling. And check them out, tsheets.com.
Whoops, sorry.
Yep. And our second platinum sponsor, Aero Workflow, is the only workflow solution made by Pro Advisors for Pro Advisors. So if you're looking for a solution that that adapts to most of the work that Pro Advisors use in terms of managing the workflow deadlines, aeroworkflow.com. Check them out. And our last sponsor is HubDoc. HubDoc is the only solution that we've seen that does document aggregation. That means it actually logs into all your banks and credit cards and financial institutions and pulls those statements for you and puts them in a single location. Now, Pro Advisors get a free account, just like with TSheets. They get a free account. If you go to hubdoc.com/QBPowerHour, you can set up your free account. So for your own accounting, you can check it out. And of course, you pay for every customer you add afterwards.
Awesome, thank you. And we really appreciate our sponsors. They're the ones that make this possible for us to do it for free. As Hector mentioned, dealing with the CPE, that's a very time-consuming process, and it involves a lot of our time, as well as putting this content together and presenting it. We really appreciate our sponsors helping us so that we can make this free for you all. And so we want to make sure that you tell them thank you. I'm going to go ahead and launch our first poll question. And Hector, if you could do me a favor and check with Amy and Annabelle and make sure that they have access to answering the questions, because I'm not sure if they do. It says they're organizers, but if you could chat and check with them, that'd be great. So if you could answer the first poll question, that would be awesome. Which one of the following best describes you? And remember, for CPE credit, you need to answer 3 out of these 4 polling questions. And the faster you answer them, the faster we can move along to get into the content. So if you could answer these quickly, we would appreciate that. And then we're going to get into the job costing with this new project feature. I'm anxious to show you guys because it's kind of cool. All right, so answer the poll question if you could. And Carolyn says, love Aero Workflow and HubDoc. Greatly appreciate their sponsorship. Awesome, thank you. Some of you have some comments about CPE in there. Remember, Hector said he's only gotten through May 25th. He just sent those out recently. Somebody else says they are going to QuickBooks Connect. Awesome. Glad to see you for there. All right. And somebody said Hector's sound is not as good as Michelle's. I could hear him fine, so I'm not sure what that problem might be. All right, I'm going to give you 5 more seconds. If you need CPE credit, please answer this poll question in 3, 2, 1, and gone. Okay, I'm going to share the results just verbally. We have 60% of you are a CPA or an accountant, 28% bookkeeper, 3% tax pro, 7% consultant, and 1% are other. So thank you very much for asking that. Okay, as we're going to get into job costing with this new project feature, Pavan, would you like to give us a kind of overview of what Intuit was thinking and why you were working on this and kind of what led up to it and some of the background?
Yeah, thank you so much, Michelle. What we often have found at Intuit, from customers who are using QuickBooks Online for doing any sort of profitability analysis, is that they really struggle with answering the question on whether they are making money or losing money on their projects and whether the last project that they worked on was profitable or not. It's really hard for them to connect those 2 invoices, 3 expenses, and 2 timesheets together and see them all in one place and also run that P&L question on this. And we've been really lucky. We've had the support of pro advisors and accountants like the audience on this webinar, and Michelle and Hector, folks like you. And you figured out like creative workarounds like sub-customers or class tracking and things like that, which can help people mitigate the lack of proper job costing inside QBO. But to be honest with you, those workarounds are time consuming, and even clients, they expect to be taught those workarounds, and sometimes they'll end up forgetting those workarounds, and you'll have to teach and reteach your clients how to work with those workarounds. So they weren't natural, they weren't intuitive, and we really needed something which was much more natural and intuitive and could really work without a lot of hand-holding. And we believe projects is that new pathway to
Awesome.
enable simple project tracking and job costing. Yep.
Awesome. That's really great. I'm so glad you guys did this. So let's get in and start taking a look at it. Thank you for that background. So first of all, some of you are going to wonder, how do I get the projects and how do I see the projects? It's not actually launched yet, so it's still in the QuickBooks Labs as of now. So it's still kind of in beta, where they may be tweaking it, making some changes and things like that before they roll it out to everyone. So to turn it on, if you go to the gear in the upper right corner, the gear under the far left column under your company, you'll see QuickBooks Labs, and you'll see track your projects there, and you need to click on that to turn it on, and this will then turn it on within that company for you. So first of all, you turn on the projects feature. Then you're going to want to go in there and set up a project. So let me just go in and show you that real quickly. All right, so here I am in Larry's landscaping. So once I've turned it on under that gear in QuickBooks Labs and I've turned it on, then you're going to see over here on the left navigation bar where it says projects. So once you go into your projects, this is where you're going to be able to add and set these projects up. So for example, you could just click on New Project, and this could be Hector's pool. Hector, you want a new pool in your backyard? And then of course you could choose the customer. Let's just do Garcia and just quick add him, saving. There we go. So you can add new projects that quickly and easily. And so here's his project there. So you can set up these projects, but then to do the job costing, we actually need to do some additional setup work first. First of all, we need to make sure that we're using QBO PLUS. You can't do this job costing that we're going to be talking about today in Simple Start Essentials or QuickBooks Self-Employed. So make sure you're using Plus. You need to set up any accounts that you might need, like job expenses, things like that, whatever accounts you're going to want to use. We used to go in and set up sub-customers. So for example, I might have my name, Michelle Long, and under Michelle, I might have a landscaping job, and I might have a new stone patio job. And those were called sub-customers in QuickBooks Online. But now we can set these up and use them as projects, as Pavan was talking about. So we're going to be using them as projects. It's the same concept, and you're going to see that as we go through the demo. It's just a new interface, and it's just looked, and the terms are now projects. You also need to go into your company settings and customize those to make sure that you've turned on the items tab so that you can use items, because when we're doing job costing, it's kind of a best practice to use items so that we can get our item profitability. You're going to see that throughout this webinar today. So you want to make sure you turn on that items table, and it's highlighted there in that screenshot. You also want to make sure that you click to track those expenses and items by customer. You may or may not make those items billable. If you've got somebody who's doing fixed fee jobs, let's say for example, if I'm going to do my stone patio for me, it might be $25,000 job, and we're not actually billing all of our expenses, but we still want to track them to know whether the project or the job was profitable or not. You also then, under estimates, if you're going to be using estimates, want to make sure that you go in there and turn it on so that you can copy that estimate to an invoice. So those are some of the settings that you need to make sure are turned on and set up. Then you'll want to go into the items list or your products and services list, and we want to make these two-sided or double-sided items. And I've discovered it kind of depends where you live on whether you call them two-sided or double-sided, but it means the same thing. We're making it so that we can record not just the sale or the income side, but also the expense or the purchasing side. So you check the box right there in the red where it says, I purchased this product or service from a vendor. This is where we're paying for it, so we want to be able to see how profitable was that item. And then, of course, you would choose an expense account down here when you're mapping that item to an account. Make sure you choose that expense account. Otherwise, when you try to use that item, it's going to give you an error message when you try to save that transaction that it has to be an expense account. If it's mapped to an income account, it's not going to work properly. Also, you only see, like in QuickBooks Desktop, when you go to the items on your checks or bills or whatever, when you go to enter an item, you could choose a service-based item that was just an income item only. In QuickBooks Online, you will only see items that are set up as two-sided items. Okay, so it helps prevent some of those mistakes and errors. So I kind of like that. The QuickBooks Online only shows us those items that are two-sided when we're trying to select it to enter a purchase. Then, if you want to, you don't have to do this, but if you want to be able to get budget versus actual reports for your project, you'll need to go in and set up a budget. So under the new budget, you want to make sure that you put in there that it's going to be subdivided by customer. See where it says subdivided by customer? Let me just go ahead and show this to you as well. I've got the screenshot so you can look back through there. So under the gear in the upper right, you click on the budgeting. You click on budgeting, and we can then click on add a new budget. You give it a name. Let's say, like Hector's Pool. Okay, so you give it a name. You choose your fiscal year. I usually do it as an annual budget. You could do it monthly if you knew exactly what months that project was going to be, or you could do it quarterly. I just choose yearly, so I can just put one number in there. You do not want to pre-fill the data unless it's based on a job that you've done previously for this particular customer. And then over here under subdivide or not, I want to subdivide it by customer. And this is where I would go through. Did I add Hector or did I add Garcia? I think I added Garcia. You go through and you choose which one you're doing this for. So this is where we can get our budgets versus actual reports, because I know right now there's no estimate versus actual report. Hopefully that will come in the future. In the meantime, this is how we can see budget versus actual to see how we're doing on our jobs, is by setting up that budget. Later you'll see how you're going to be able to do those reports. Okay, so you go through and you set up your budget for that project. Then if you want to, you're going to enter an estimate. And let's just go through, and we're going to go ahead and click, and let's enter an estimate. So I'm going to do an estimate. I set up a project in here for my stone patio. And yes, we really are wanting to create a stone patio. So down here, I could go through and do an estimate for this. Let's say there's going to be some design work. They need to do, 5 hours of design. And I want a rock fountain, not really, but we could put it on there. And that's going to be a really expensive one. They're more expensive than you realize. And maybe they would need to get some rocks to put along there. Maybe they need 30 of those. I don't know. So you go through, you do your estimate. So I go through and I create this estimate. One thing I want to point out to you too, when you create a new estimate, it's automatically going to be marked pending. Let's say we send this estimate out and the customer calls us back and they say, okay, yes, I want you to go ahead and start working on that. You could go back into that estimate and change it to an accepted status, or you could change it to a rejected status. When I create an invoice for it, it's automatically going to change the status to closed. But you can go in and manually change it to accepted or rejected if you want to keep track of the status of these estimates. Now I'm going to go ahead and save and close the estimate. Then the next thing we have to do, and before I do that, let's do another poll question, because I know we got to get 4 of them in. Let's do another poll question. Do you already do job costing for your clients? So the estimate is no longer the budget. Monica, that is one way that you can do it. You can do an estimate and then go in and customize reports to get an estimate versus budget. I'm showing how you could do it using the actual budgeting feature. Will there be a tutorial? I am going through this now, so I'm not sure what you want there. Not sure what you want there. Somebody's asking about the poll question. There is no wrong answer. You're going to get CPE credit if you do 3 out of the 4 poll questions. There's no wrong answers on those poll questions. Okay. Okay. Very good. Go ahead and answer that poll. The faster you do, the better. Somebody says no job costing in QBO yet. Oh, somebody's answering they haven't done any in QuickBooks Online yet. Will you be able to invoice a percentage or partial estimate? At this time, you cannot do a partial estimate. Partial purchase orders are in QBO or rolling out soon. I'm not positive. They had come out, but then they went back, so I'm not sure the status. But on the estimates, no, there's no partial estimates there. On the budgets, can we use items? No, the budgets are based on accounts. Okay, the budgets are based on accounts. Okay, so go ahead. I got most of you answer that poll question. 5 more seconds on that poll question. If you need CPE credit, please do that quickly. Okay, please answer that quickly in 3, 2, 1. All right, and this is great. 50% of you, yes, you do job costing. 45% said no, so that's a pretty good split there. Okay, so we just entered an estimate. Now we would enter our expenses or our purchases, and you could do this as an expense, a check, or a bill. You may also have people entering some time. So let's say, for example, I'm going to go through and let's say we wrote a check to someone. So let's say I have Sam's Stonework. I set him up, Sam's Stonework, and he's doing the design for us. So I had to pay Sam for, let's say I wound up paying him for 6 hours of design work. And then I can mark that billable. Over here, just like before, I would choose which customer or project. See how it says customer or project right there? So here I can choose Stone Patio, and you'll see Michelle's Stone Patio, so I can choose that. So Sam's just doing the stonework, so I'm just going to charge him for that and then also for some installation. So let's say I paid him for some installation and maybe it took him, 25 hours of installation. I can put that in there. And again, let's pick. And notice a while ago I typed in stone and it pulled it in, or I can type in long and then I would see both of the projects that I have set up for me. So I'm going to choose Michelle's Stonework, save and close. And oh, I didn't fix these two. Let's see. I can't remember which ones I fixed and which ones I didn't. Some of them were off. Let's trash can that line and see. Whoops. Trash can that line. Some of these in this sample company were not mapped to the right account. Remember, that's why I told you you had to do that. So let's just do installation. And that one hopefully is mapped to the right one. No, doggone it. Okay, we're going to skip mine. We're going to go into the other job. So under projects, where I have already entered this using the right accounts, we have this sample company and a bunch of the items were set up wrong and I had to go fix them. So here was the installation. I had entered this as a time. Let me go enter one of the expenses and show you that one since that's what I was doing. Billable expense charge. Oh, dang. Here's the check. Okay, so on this check, this one's to Colonial Nursery. Notice I'm not entering it under the account field. Okay, we don't enter it in the account. We enter it down in the items. And this is where under the items area, this is where these items must be mapped to an expense account, or you could use a cost of goods sold account. A lot of these items in the sample company that we use are mapped to income accounts. That's why you were seeing that error message. I went in and fixed a few of them earlier, but then I couldn't remember the names of them, so sorry about that. So here's the design. So here's our design. I did mark it billable. One thing to note, when you create a check and you mark something as billable, this is actually going to create 2 transactions when I save it. It creates the check and it creates that billable expense. So when I click on that billable expense, you can see here it says the amount, the account, and if you've got your markup turned on, it would be pulling that information from your company settings. So you can set a default markup of 25% or 30% or whatever you want to. So when you create a check, expense, or a bill and mark it billable, it's going to save the transaction and the billable expense. So just keep that in mind. You'll have 2 of those transactions there. So there's that, and that's why you'll see on here the two transactions, or our billable expense charge, but then when I click on it, it takes me back into that check as well. So there's a billable expense, there's the check. Then we also had another one here for, this was like Colonial Nursery, where I bought the trees and shrubs. So again, you enter your transactions for the costs. When you're paying for somebody to do the service, like the stonework, so when you pay a subcontractor, you would mark it as billable. If it's a fixed fee, don't mark it billable. You put in the customer name just like normal. So you enter all those transactions for your expenses, okay? Remember, if it's a fixed fee job, you still want to mark the customer, but don't mark it as billable, okay? So that's kind of up to you. Now, notice here I've got this real quick list, transactions list for Michelle Long. That's coming under my projects. So see, here's all my projects. When I click on a project, I quickly can click on my transaction list. And I think this is great because if our clients go into an expense report, let's say they go in and look at expenses by customer, it's not going to show things with an item. Okay, it won't show those items. So having the transaction list, and let me just show you that real quickly. When you go under your reports, and let's say I go under review my expenses and purchases, on an expenses by vendor summary, those aren't going to show up on here. Notice I don't see Sam's stonework on here, and I do see Colonial Nursery here, but I don't see that Sam's stonework. But if I go over to, under all reports, expenses and purchases, if I go to a purchases by vendor, let me look for the summary report. Well, let's just go into the detail then. Under purchases by vendor, now I will see those on here because a purchase report is pulling the items. See how it's pulling the product and service items? Whereas an expense report is when it was posted to the account. Okay, so your expense reports are pulling the account. Your purchase reports are when you're using those items. That's why in the project area where they have the transaction list, I think it's great because it's pulling all transactions, whether they used an account or if they used an item, a product or service item. So I think that's really important, and I love that they're doing that. Now, after we've done all of our expenses, we've put all these things in there, maybe we entered some billable time, like here's a time charge, then the next step in the process would be to invoice. And when you create this invoice, if you've marked them billable, it's going to slide out from the right-hand side over here where you can choose to add those things onto your invoice, okay? Be careful here because here's where you can have a mistake that I see people make. If you create an estimate for things that are billable and you add the estimate on here and you add the billable items on here, then you've probably doubled them up because they were on the estimate. Then when you paid for them, you marked them billable. Now you've got it on your invoice twice. So if you've got a fixed fee job, you may use that estimate and copy that onto your invoice. But otherwise, if you've got the items on your estimate, and let's just go in here and look at the estimate. Let's close this out. Go into our sales area. We can click on estimates under customers, estimates. You'll see here's an estimate here. We got a couple open estimates. Let's pull one up. Let's just pull up that one. On this estimate, see here's the design work that I paid Sam Stonework for, and when I mark it billable, it's going to come through from that billable expense. Here's the fountain and the rocks. If I enter a bill for those and mark it billable, it's going to come through from that transaction when I enter it. So if I copy this estimate onto the invoice and those billable expenses onto the invoice, now I've doubled up. So be careful of that. If you're using the billable time and expenses, don't copy the invoice onto your estimate. You still can create that estimate, but you're not going to want to put it on that invoice. Otherwise, you've got it doubled up. All right, so just keep that in mind. It's different if you're doing a fixed fee job and it's not billable expenses. Okay, so keep that in mind. Let's go back to our slides and click through some of these. So you enter the estimate, record your time and expenses, again, under the items detail section, marking whether it's billable or not. Then one other thing I wanted to point out is you can have your clients enter expenses on the mobile app. They can indicate which customer it goes to, but they cannot mark it billable. I wish they could, but they can't. So they could go to the hardware store and they could buy a bunch of job materials and supplies. They can enter that as expense on their phone, take a picture of the receipt. They can indicate which job or project it was for, but they cannot mark it billable. If you need to mark it billable, have them put that to a unique account like pending expenses or something, because somebody then is going to have to go back into that transaction and mark it as billable. Okay? Projects are not yet available on the mobile app. Is that correct, Pavan? Can they assign
That's
it? I would
correct.
assume though. I would assume they could assign it to a project on that mobile app, couldn't they?
We are working on that feature, and that's why we are in public beta right now. So we are working on supporting the tagging of transactions on QB mobile app. But as of now, you won't be able to create a project inside the mobile app.
Okay, but what about that expense? If they choose the customer, it's going to go show up in the project's list on the transaction list, isn't it?
Yeah, the project transaction list is also not available in mobile right now, and that's also something we're working on.
Okay, so they're not going to be able to see these transaction reports and the project reports and things like that. So just keep that in mind and go into the mobile app and test it out if you want to. I absolutely love people entering expenses on the mobile app and taking that picture of it. But just keep in mind some of those limitations there. Also, if you're working with downloaded transactions, if your clients, which I try to teach my clients, always use a credit card or make an online payment. I don't like my clients writing checks anymore because it takes more processing time. So I encourage them to use those credit cards or do online payments. So we can download those transactions. When you download the transaction, notice here you can mark it billable and you can choose a customer or job so that you can assign it to that. So you can do that with downloaded transactions. However, you cannot set up a bank rule to allocate it to a customer or project. So you can do those individual transactions as they're coming through, which makes sense because, you know, you go buy job materials, you're not going to know, it's not going to be the same customer all the time. So you wouldn't want to set up a bank rule on that. But you can do it with the downloaded transactions. If you had, let's say they went to the hardware store and they bought job materials for 5 different projects that they're working on, you would then click on that split button, allocate it out between all the different projects. Okay, so if they go to the hardware store and they bought materials for Michelle's Stone Patio and Hector's Pool and 3 other jobs, click on that splits button and you can split it out as needed to the multiple projects or customers. Does that make sense? Okay, now this is something tricky. So we've gone through and we've entered all of the expenses for subcontractors that we paid, materials and stuff that we purchased, some time like that. What about a situation where the owner of the company says, you know, hey, Michelle, I want my time showing up on my job profitability reports. When I look at how profitable is my job, I want my time in there as well. Well, unfortunately, a sole proprietor doesn't get a paycheck. And we have to post the money we pay the sole proprietor to the owner's draw account, which doesn't show up on our job reports, right? So what we can do is basically, it's making a journal entry. However, we need to use our items because we want to see our item profitability, and we can't use an item on a journal entry. So what we can do is we can do a $0 check. And this is essentially, we use a check to make a journal entry so that we can allocate the owner's time to that job. So what you do is you go set up an item called owner's time. And what we're going to do, notice on this check, it's going in and back out. Let me actually pull that transaction up for you. And to do that, I'm going to run a quick, I'm going to go back to my projects. So I'm in my project, and I'm going to run my project profitability report so that I can see the profitability. As you scroll down towards the bottom, notice under other expenses, because I set that item up, owner's time, to go to an other expense account because it's not a real expense. I have some of you saying, wait, Michelle, you can't do that on the P&L. Owner's time is not really an expense, all that stuff. So let me just show you, let me go over here and do a normal P&L. What we're doing is basically we're just doing a journal entry that's allocating that time to the job. So the money's going in and out of that account, so there is no net impact on our bottom line profitability. Notice down here at the bottom of a P&L, the owner's job cost allocation is 0. Because what we're doing is we're making a journal entry, and on one line we're putting that into that job, and on the other line we're taking it back out. So it's going in and out of an expense account. It's actually 0 on our net income. So here you can see this is where the positive number is the expense being allocated to this job or this project. So when I run that project profitability report, it will include the owner's time, so he can see how profitable is that job with his time included. Is he bidding it properly? Is he charging enough to cover his own time? Because there's no expense there for him, but this allows us to see that. But then on the very next line, you use the same item but as a negative, so it zeroes itself out, so there's no net impact on your bottom line P&L, but yet on your project profitability report, you've got that reflected. So look, he actually lost money on this job. If we just looked at it here, it looks like he made money, but that's without his time allocated to the job. So this is a great reporting tool for them to see the profitability of that job with their time allocated. Does that make sense? Okay. So hopefully that is a good way. And again, you're only going to do that though for those owners who are a sole proprietor or an LLC. Now we're going to talk about allocating payroll later. Unfortunately, that is a big limitation right now with QuickBooks Online, is that you cannot allocate payroll to the jobs yet automatically. You're going to have to do it manually because there's no integration with the QBO payroll to allocate that time to the jobs yet. But this is for a sole proprietor who's not on payroll. Okay, so that's just a trick there that you can use. Then you're all ready to do the invoice or a sales receipt, depending. You know, are they, as you finish up the job, are they writing you a check and you're getting paid now, or are you going to invoice them and they're going to pay you later? Now remember, when you create that invoice, this is where you want to be careful. If you've got billable items, that you don't add the expense or the estimates onto the invoice, because if you've got the estimate and the billable items, then you're going to have duplicates on there. So just kind of keep that as well. We've got some other questions like, how would you cost insurance to the job? So here's one of the things that a lot of people will ask, you know, how can I allocate insurance or overhead to these projects or jobs? So a lot of times what companies will do is they will come up with an overhead allocation rate. Let's say, for example, 3% or 5%, and they choose what they want to base it on. Do you want to base it on gross revenues or net gross margins, or, you know, what do they want to base it on? So you work with the owner to come up with what is the overhead burden rate. And then I recommend always setting up, if you're using these projects, that you always set up a project called overhead or admin. So when you pay for something like the rent expense or the insurance expense, you can allocate those to that overhead or admin project. Then periodically, either monthly or quarterly or however often, you'll need to go through and do an allocation entry to allocate that from that overhead project to the other projects. Or you could do it on a project-by-project basis. So some of that, or that is covered actually in the advanced certification training materials, but there's also third-party apps that will do that very nicely for you. I would tell you to check out Notify. And I've got a slide on it here in a minute. But Notify, they definitely do a good job with that overhead or burden allocation rates. And then also there's BQE from BillQuick. So you might check some of those out. Okay, so I hope that helps some. So then you're going to go through and do that invoice for the job. And then after we do the invoice, we want to go through and look at our reports. Now let's go into that projects area, and you're going to see in your projects, you automatically have a lot of these reports, like Pavan was saying, the customers, they were kind of all over the place, you know, and people didn't know where to go to see, you know, what's the profitability by this job. In the past, we had to go create a P&L, then we had to customize that P&L to filter for specific customers or jobs to get a P&L by job. Look at this. All I have to do is click, bam, project profitability. This gives me the P&L for this project right here with one click. So it's right there, readily available, and a lot easier to access than it was before. So this is where I love that. The other thing was, what is my unbilled time and expenses? In the past, again, you'd have to go into the reports, find the unbilled time and expenses report, filter it for a specific customer or job or project. Well, now with one click, we can see a report of what do we have, that is unbilled. So that, again, is very quick and easy, okay? Let me go back to my projects area. We also then have non-billable time. And this could be, some of the overhead or admin time where they wanted to track the time on the job, but it's not billable directly to the job. Or maybe it was a fixed fee job. They entered their time and they want to track their time, but yet it's not billable to the job. And by the way, T-Sheets now integrates with QuickBooks Online when it comes to time. So if you've got clients that are using time tracking and they need to be able to allocate things, check out T-Sheets. And like I said, the integration with QBO is just awesome now. Hector did a webinar with them in May. You may want to go back and watch that because they demoed it and talked about that more in depth. So I'm not going to be going over that today. So we've got all of these reports that are already here just with one click. We also, instead of the overview tab, can click right here on that transactions tab, which is kind of nice because here you see your transaction list as a report, but here's your transactions in another fashion where you could go in there and actually do some things from those. Like if I wanted to receive payment for this invoice over here. So this is just a different way to look at those transactions. So here's what we have right here. Now there's some other reports though that are not in the projects area yet, which Pavan, I would encourage you to take this as some feedback, is you've got the profitability for that project, but what if I want to see my item profitability for that project or in total? Now some of these reports may be projects that you want to see for all projects, not just one specific project. So in the projects area, you may have where it lists all your projects. Maybe we could have some reports right there. But here on the right, you'll see the item profitability, and then we also have that income by customer. So in here, under reports, if you go in and you create just a normal profit and loss, and this is to create your item profitability report. And before I do it, we have two more poll questions. Let me go ahead and do one now. So you've been seeing this projects feature. What do you think about the new projects feature? Is there any programs on inventory on QBO? Hooray, there's a lot of them. If you go to apps.com, so you can do FIFO inventory with QuickBooks Online, but it's basic inventory, and you got to have QBO PLUS. If you need more robust inventory, go to apps.com. You're going to find lots of inventory apps out there. Which ones are the right ones to use depends on what type of inventory. Is it manufacturing and building assemblies? Is it e-commerce or a retail store? So the different types of inventory will affect the apps that are going to be right for that particular client. Very cool. Kristen says this is definitely moving in the right direction. We won't be satisfied until it does payroll loaded job costing. Yes, Kristen, I know Pavan and the other product managers at Intuit have been hearing that from us for a while. So hopefully they are working on that. Pavan, do you want to add anything about the payroll allocation that might be worked on or might not be, or do you want to add any insight from Intuit's perspective?
Yeah, I can share some insights. So I think projects is really our first tab in paving the foundation for achieving labor burden job costing in the future. And please stay tuned into this feature. We will be adding more bells and whistles, and we will be adding support for labor costing in the future. We are aware this is a big request, and that's why we're not claiming with projects that true job costing has arrived. We are headed in this direction, and so we are aware and we will work on this.
Very great, thank you. Now we had a comment here from Martin that he can't find it in his QBO. As an accountant, I might do projects and it's not available to me, so it's worthless to me at this time. So Martin, it is not available for accountants, as you discovered. They want us to work using the work tab where we can track our tasks and our projects there. So it's not available for accountants, but this is something we might be using for our clients. And Pavan, do you want to comment on the availability for accountants?
Yeah, Michelle, I'd love to understand from accountants who'd like to use this for their own practice, like how would they like to use it? As you're aware, our practice management team recently launched a practice management feature, and their project's solution is geared towards task management. So I think there are some things we need to work on as far as like presenting projects together, because the projects feature of QuickBooks Online has built is trying to do financial transaction management. So we want to make sure when we bring it to accountants, it works really seamlessly with your work and task management, and that's taking us a little bit longer. If you guys have feedback for me, on how you'd like to use it for your practice, I would really, really be grateful if you can reach out to me. I will be happy to share my email, and I'd love to hear from you.
So that's great. Thank you for that offer. So in the chat, if you want to put your email in there, Martin, maybe you could reach out and provide Pavan some insight into what your needs are. Okay, so let's go. Let me close that poll question. Thank you guys for answering. Yeah.
Michelle, can I jump in for a second? There is. I'm going through the chat box, and I probably say this has been the busiest questions box I've managed in a while. There's a couple of underlying themes that I want to clarify. Number one, a project, that what Michelle is showing, a project, it is the exact same thing as a customer, a sub-customer, or what in QuickBooks Desktop they call jobs. So this is not a new functionality. This is playing off the existing customer database that allows you to create sub-jobs. So there's a lot of concern about apps like T-Sheets or whatever saying, will my T-Sheets read this? But just remember, there's no difference on the way QuickBooks functions. So a project, it's basically a sub-customer, and the screen that she was showing, the new feature, is just a way to organize the information. This is not a new feature yet. Now, every single person is asking about payroll and burden payroll and all that stuff. Michelle showed the workaround for the owner's time. If you need to add the cost of payroll, the only thing you can do is either a journal entry or the owner's time thing that Michelle showed, or you can search in YouTube a workaround that I have in my channel which uses POs. But right now, there's no way to turn a timesheet into job costing in any possible way. So it has to be done via a workaround. So those are the two main themes. And a few people are saying that in their QB labs, they're not seeing it. So I'm making the assumption that maybe they're in Canada or something like that, because I haven't heard. Yeah.
I was under the impression that it has rolled out to the other countries as well. So if you all need to find it, if you click on the gear here in the upper right under QuickBooks Labs, it should be showing there. Pavan, is it possible that it hasn't rolled out to everybody in QuickBooks Labs yet?
No, Michelle, it should be available for QuickBooks Online Plus customers across Canada, Australia, United Kingdom, and US.
Okay, yeah, I thought it had rolled out to the 4 big countries. So if you don't see it, maybe you're not in a Plus account. Maybe you're in QBO Essentials, because you do have to have QBO Plus to be able to allocate things to the customer or project. Like Hector said, it's really not changing the workflow of what we've been doing previously. What it is changing is when we assign it to that customer or that job, it's all in one convenient location now. So when I click on the left nav bar under projects, I see all my projects here. I can click on a project and quickly see all of these reports in one place. Previously, you had stuff in the customer center, you had stuff over here in the report center, and various sections in the reports, and this is pulling it all together in one location in a nice interface. And I also want to point out to you, when you are in a project, notice over here to the right, send feedback. As you're working with it, send them the feedback. But basically, like Hector said, we're doing things the same way we've always been doing them. It's just in pulling it all together in one convenient location, calling it project. So it's still like our job costing or our sub-customers that we were using previously. Now, let me go ahead and finish a couple of reports, and then we'll get back into some more discussion and questions. Somebody did ask, is QuickBooks available to clients as well? And yes, it is. So QuickBooks Labs is available to your clients, so you can turn it on in there. So we were going to look at the item profitability. So you create your normal profit and loss. you change display the columns by, and scroll down here to the bottom where it says products or services. This is where a lot of these companies that are doing this kind of work want to see their item profitability. If I'm paying Sam Stonework, you know, $50 an hour and I'm billing them out at $75, am I profitable enough? Is my 30% markup on my items, is that enough that I'm profitable? So per item, and you can see we got a lot of different items across the top here. I would really go filter for just the items that I wanted to look at. But like here's your plants and trees, hedges and shrubs. You'll see your income and then the profitability down at the bottom so you can see are those items profitable or not. So a lot of times they will want to see item profitability report. Also under the reports, a standard report that you have under sales, so under reports and review sales, is that income by customer summary. So you can click on income by customer summary and quickly see your total income, total expense, and then the summary over here. So down here under Michelle Long, you'll see there's that project, i.e. job. You'll see it all listed in one report so you can review all of them at one time. Now here's where I think under the projects area, when we're on the list here, Pavan, one of my feedback would be, let's have a link or two to some of these kind of overall reports up here, like the item profitability report, the income by customer summary, or income by project summary, if you want to rename it. Let's have some of those overall reports right up here somewhere where we don't have to go elsewhere. So again, we're bringing it all into one central location so that you don't have to go over to the reports area. Then another report that may want to be over there is the additional to do the budgets versus actual reports. And this is where I mentioned you go through, you set up your budget, and then you go run that budget versus actual report. Now when you run this report, it's going to look funky to you. So for example, let me come in here and just click on reports. This is something new. I don't know how long this has been out there. I just discovered it. So it may have been there for a while, but I just discovered it. Now that doesn't mean anything. But if I run my budget versus actual report, I'm going to come in here and let's choose, come on. All of a sudden it decided to get slow. Let's just choose, I don't know why this is, let's do Y for beginning of the year. Why is it getting 2016? To T for today. And I don't want to do Larry's landscaping. I want to do, what happened to my budget? Doggone it. Okay, hold on. I need to run my report first, then I need to filter it. Customize, I want to filter for my job. So let's say I'm running this budget for the job, the budget that I created for Michelle Long landscaping. Now watch what happens when I run this report. Okay, run the report. Notice I have Long Michelle, landscaping, total for Long Michelle, and a total. What? I don't want 4 columns. I want 1 column right here where it shows me the actual, the budget, and all this, right? So if I come in here under Customize, and I come down to under my rows and columns, check this out, Show Grid. I was like, wow, that's new. I don't know how long that has been there. Have you all seen that? I just discovered it getting ready for this webinar. Accounts versus totals. You could do accounts versus customers. This is where people said, I want to change my columns and rows. I want to see it differently. I can do accounts versus totals. That's all I want. I want to see my accounts for my P&L accounts versus my totals. I don't want to see customers versus total. But anyway, so accounts versus total. Then I can click Run My Report. But bam, one report the way I wanted it. Just that middle section, right? Do you like that? Yay! So on the slides, I show you how to do that. Okay, so on the slides, I'm showing you how to do that. Then you want to save that customization and bookmark it if you use it frequently. So you go ahead and go up there and you save the customization. You can share it with everybody within that has access to that client if you wanted to. Excuse me. Then you also can bookmark it. And I talked about how to do bookmarks previously, so I'm not going to cover that again. If you want to check that out, go to my YouTube channel and look for, or just Google QuickBooks shortcuts. on my website, Long for Success. You'll find a post with an article that links to it. So that's some of the reports that you also might want to run. So reviewing a couple limitations, and we've got one more poll question, then we'll do some more questions. Some of the limitations: you cannot do the bank rules. This one is wrong. I'm sorry, I pulled an old slide. You can do this now. You can assign that customer. Oh wait, you can assign it in the rules, but you can do it on each individual transaction. Okay. You cannot do progress invoicing at this time or allocate the payroll. Okay, so the progress invoicing and the payroll are two of the limitations at this time. You'd have to do entries or look to a third-party app for some of those things. Pavan, do you want to add anything that I missed or something that you wanted to cover that I didn't mention?
Yeah, I think there was one question I'm seeing on the boards which is related to why is it taking longer to bring projects for accountants. And again, I think my initial response may not have been clear. We are making sure that when you're trying to manage tasks inside practice management, the new feature that's out inside QuickBooks Online Accountant, that really works seamlessly with this projects feature that is available for your clients. And so we want to make sure we don't break the experience for accountants, because while projects is really important for your own practice, it's also really important that your clients get their hands on it. And at this point, we feel it's more ready for your clients. So we are actively encouraging you to push your clients to adopt this. And our messaging to accountants right now is, yes, please play with this, give it a spin. But know that we are working on some changes to make it work seamlessly with the practice management work feature. And that's taking us just a wee bit extra time.
Wonderful.
Hey, Pavan, sorry, let me jump in real quick. The misunderstanding is that accountants don't have access to projects, and that's not correct. If you're logged into QBOA, you can turn on projects. The misunderstanding may have been that there's no link between the projects and the workflow experience, but you can certainly, in your own free QBOA account, you can turn on projects. At least it works under my account. Michelle, you may want to see if you can turn it on for your QBOA account.
Okay, yeah. Well, instead of doing that right this minute, I wanted to point out, some people are saying, where's the projects for accountants or the work? I don't see what you're talking about with the practice management. In QBOA, over here where it says work, this is the new project management version 1 that has just come out, where we can track our tasks and our projects for our clients. This was a webinar that I did a couple of months ago where we talked about workflow. We also did one with Arrow talking about, tracking our tasks, our workflow, our due dates. That's the practice management under work. That is different than project management like job costing for our clients. And so that's something to keep in mind. If you need something more robust, again, watch that webinar a couple months ago, I think, with Arrow Workflow. That's awesome. They're one of our sponsors, and it's amazing. So we need to differentiate between practice management and project management. What we've been talking about, the project feature, is with job costing, basically for our clients. That's what I've been covering. We've been talking about the job costing feature. It's a new interface for our job costing for our clients. So with that said, I have time to stay for some more questions, but we got to get this last poll out here for those of you that have to jump at the top of the hour. Oh my gosh, Hector, you're going to shoot me. I launched it and closed it.
Okay, give us 1 second. I'll get the last polling question up and running. Just give me 1 minute.
Okay. I apologize, everybody. I got click happy. Do you ever get click happy where you just click too fast? So while Hector's doing that, those of you that do have to jump off, remember, thank our sponsors, T-Sheets, Arrow Workflow, and HubDoc, and especially, talk to T-Sheets about that time tracking integration that they have with QuickBooks Online now, because you're going to love that. Also, like, if you are wanting to know more about practice management, Arrow Workflow is amazing. It was created by accountants who have the same struggles and issues that we are facing, and they got together and created Arrow Workflow to meet our needs. So it's amazing. And then also thank you to HubDoc as well.
Polling question is up.
All right. Thank you, Hector. And Pavan, can you stick around for a few minutes?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so let me get into the polling question.
It's up.
They are answering it now. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, it's up
Thank
there.
you. Pavan, do you want to add anything else based on the questions that were out there? Because I wasn't monitoring the questions.
Yeah, I think I was able to address some of the questions there and send private responses. But I think the highlights that Hector shared around the two themes he was seeing on the question board were all accurate. So I don't have anything further to add.
There is, Pavan, an underlying theme here from like a word search on the log here. It looks like payroll job costing. It's sort of the #1 request here. Secondary is estimates versus actuals, so you don't have to use the budget workaround. And the third one is progress invoicing. It looks like from most of the questions and feature requests, it looks like those three is what most people are clamoring for.
That's good.
So keep that on your radar, please.
Yes. I think the good news here is these things are on our roadmap, and so we are actively aware we have to prioritize work on this.
Yes, very good. Okay, so I'm going to give people about 5 more seconds to answer this poll question. If you need CPE credit, please answer that. So in 3, 2, 1, and gone. And thank you, Hector, for fixing that for me. And so I want to remind you all, we can continue this discussion. Go to if you use Facebook, go search for QB Power Hour and join our Facebook group. Hector and a lot of us are out there answering questions, sharing comments. You know, go post out there. What are your thoughts on the new project feature and get the discussion going? What do you want to see? Make sure you're sending your feedback into Intuit. Pavan and the team are listening and taking that feedback into consideration as they continue working on this project feature as they roll it out. So click on that feedback button. Let us know your comments, feedbacks, and suggestions. I'm just excited to see that they're working on this and they're listening to our input. So I think that's great. Also, then there's the LinkedIn group, Successful QuickBooks Consultants. Both of those, we are out there quite a bit. So somebody says, poor Pavan, are we demanding or what? We are demanding. And you know, the thing that's so hard, I feel sorry for all you project managers because you go through and you do something great, and then we always say, okay, now what I want is this. We always want more, but that's job security for you all because we always want more. You have more things to keep doing, right?
That's correct. That's correct. And we are happy to give the feedback.
Yeah, go ahead. I wanted to say, Michelle, do you have a chance to open up your browser real quick?
Yep.
I want you to click on this link that I sent. I sent it to everyone here. I think it's important for people to know, especially when we talk about new features. And Michelle, you're not sharing your screen. Try to see if you can.
I'm getting it.
So when you go to the QuickBooks Online feature request page, there's actually a history of all the feedback that people have given into it, and it tells you which projects have been quote unquote started, which means that they're actively working on, and the ones that are on the review. You can actually tell right now the top votes, and you have to vote there, and that helps the product management team to know that there's masses asking for stuff. Like Michelle and I can scream until Friday about what we want here, but when there's thousands of people asking for the same thing, that's when you get their eyes and ears. Although you could probably argue that Michelle and I have a pretty strong voice, but when there's thousands of people asking for the same thing, it helps. So if you actually go into that link that I sent on the chat box, you can actually see the projects that they're working on. So for example, the #1 was to customize more invoices and sales forms. It tells you exactly what they've done. And progress invoicing and job costing are both under review, which means that there are product managers working for solutions on this. So I wanted to make sure you had that link, and you can actually register, and you can vote and add new ideas in there. And if it gets traction, it gets under the radar of the product managers.
Yeah, Hector, just one small point on that one. Guys, if you have any feedback on progress invoicing, you can also reach out to me, and I'll be happy to answer questions on progress invoicing as well.
Awesome. Well, wonderful. And this is great. I really appreciate you joining us, Pavan, to add the insight and perspective from Intuit. So thank you for joining us, Hector. Thank you for your help, and thank you to all the attendees who joined us. The next QB Power Hour will be coming up in a couple of weeks. I hope to see you there. In the meantime, everybody, have a great day. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Bye.